All right, so the previous example gave us, previous video gave us information about what the variables were. 3.2 C, I think it was. So this is information from the previous video, and I'm going to take these and throw them away because I'm going to use a specific example to talk about annual percentage yield. Because here's all the variables that we can talk about. P and P is principal, R is interest rate in decimal form, N is the number of times we compound the interest, T is the time in years, and A of T is the amount in the account. But I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to say let's talk specifically about one situation that talks about annual percentage yield. So if we're talking about annual percentage yield, we can talk in general about, here's our topic today, annual percentage yield. Annual percent yield. And the yield is different from the rate. So I'm going to compare this, A of t equals P times 1 plus R over N to the n-th power. I'm going to compare it to, in general, what we've got for f of x equals C times A to the x power. And I spread it out a little bit only because I'm going to rewrite this as well. And I'm going to say A of t equals P times 1 plus R over N to the n-th power. And I'm going to spread it out for a reason, because I'm going to compare and contrast. In general, we call it f of x. Specifically for this situation, we got A of t. In general, we say we've got a starting amount C. C corresponds to P, the principal starting amount. X, in our general format, corresponds to T in our interest rate formula, or our annual percentage rate formula. The A, that leaves just the A, and that leaves in our interest rate formula, compounding interest rate formula, 1 plus R over N to the nth power. And that means that A is this amount. So if, again, I guess if we're talking up here in general, if we're talking about A's and R's, we could say that A equals 1 plus R. And if we subtract 1, we get R equals A minus 1. So that R here in general tells us what the rate is for this exponential function. And what we're going to try and do is find what that R corresponds to. This R is we're going to find that R corresponds to the annual percentage yield, what the actual rate of interest is for a year, including compounding interest. So if I've got an example here, and I'm going to take some space over here, this doesn't correspond to any of this stuff, but if I've got, for example, let's see, a situation where I've got interest rate equals 5%, so R is equal to 5. If my rate equals 5%, my R equals 0.05. And if I had a situation where the n was compounded quarterly, that means that n is 4. And I'm just throwing out this as an example to find out what my APY would be. We can find out what our APY would be by finding out what our A is from the annual percentage rate formula, and then calculate our R, and that will give us our annual percentage yield. And it'll be a little bit different, it'll be a little bit better, and a little bit different from the annual percentage rate. So let's plug this in here. I got my A from my general formula. My growth factor A is this square, this rectangle, I guess, 1 plus R over N. That's an R to the nth power. And there's my growth factor A. Let's plug in the numbers here. A equals 1 plus R, 0.05 over N, 4 to the nth power, 4th power. And now all I do here is calculate I would start here by calculating 0.05 divided by 4, add 1, and I'll get 1.0125 to the 4th power. That's my A. A equals that, and A equals 1 point, I pull out my calculator and I got 1.05094 ... And after that, it really doesn't matter a whole lot because we have to round to about 4 or 5 decimal places. Because now we can say that, well, I'm going to take this over here and I'm going to say, well, that my A, my growth factor A, which is this rectangle, which corresponds to my exponential function here, my A equals 1.05094. And that's equal to my 1 plus r, because A is equal to 1 plus r, this is equal to 1 plus r. Subtract 1 and we get r equals 0.05094 ... And that's my r, but that would be my r in terms of the number. What kind of interest rate do I get? Interest yield, annual percentage yield. This would be my annual percentage yield in terms of a decimal, because that's the rate. In terms of a rate, we multiply by 100%. Move the decimal point 2 spots. I got 5.094%. By multiplying this by 100%, I've got 5.094% rate. That would be my annual percentage yield, which takes into account, number one, that I'm getting 5% interest, but I'm also compounding 4 times a year. Compounding means I'm putting interest in after the first quarter, after the second quarter, after the third quarter, and finally at the end of the fourth quarter as well. And all that adds up to a different interest rate that's called the annual percentage yield.